There exists a mental protocol so effective at restructuring consciousness that mainstream psychology dismissed it for decades. Not because it failed to work, but precisely because it worked too rapidly. This isn't mysticism dressed as science or another recycled law of attraction packaged differently. What you're about to discover was deemed too immediate, too transformative, and for those very reasons, it threatened the established framework of gradual therapeutic change. Yet the mechanism behind it is verifiable, rooted in how your nervous system interfaces with the quantum field of potential realities. Within this transmission, you'll learn how a precisely calibrated inquiry posed at the threshold moment can unlock dormant neural pathways and synchronize your consciousness with the timeline where your intentions have already materialized. This goes beyond technique. This is perceptual rewiring at the deepest level of your being. Take a moment now and comment below with this declaration: I am the architect of my reality, and consciousness bends to my will. This statement serves as your initial frequency marker, signaling to the field that you're ready to step into what has always belonged to you. Very few researchers have bridged the chasm between empirical science and mystical understanding as courageously as Jacobo Grinberg, a Mexican neurophysiologist whose work remains among the most mysterious and profound contributions to consciousness studies in modern history. Grinberg devoted his existence to unraveling the enigmas of awareness, perception, and the nature of what we call the real. Where conventional scientific inquiry seeks validation in external measurements and observable phenomena, he directed his attention inward, investigating neural architecture, emotional patterns, non-ordinary states of awareness, and indigenous wisdom traditions as gateways to comprehending the universe's fundamental operations. His revolutionary offering to human understanding was the synergic theory, later refined as neuronal field theory, a paradigm-shifting framework proposing that what we experience as reality is not an independent objective phenomenon existing outside ourselves, but rather an emergent construct generated by the human mind's interpretive structures. Put simply, the universe you inhabit is substantially fashioned from your internal architecture, from the belief systems you've inherited, the emotional imprints you carry, and the unconscious programming running beneath your awareness. In our current era, with quantum mechanics advancing and neuroscience revealing new territories of understanding, many of Grinberg's insights are finding scientific validation. Contemporary research confirms that consciousness itself influences the behavior of subatomic particles, that the act of observation fundamentally alters what is being observed, and that perception doesn't simply receive reality, but actively constructs it. The methodology you're about to receive stands on this validated foundation, offering a direct route to recalibrating your mental operating system, and through that recalibration, transforming the experiential field you call your life. Consider for a moment that everything you witness, every sensation you register, every experience you believe to be happening to you, is not in truth an external occurrence unfolding independently of your awareness, but rather a holographic projection emanating from the depths of your consciousness. This was the radical proposition at the heart of Jacobo Grinberg's synergic framework. For Grinberg, the human brain functions not as a passive antenna receiving signals from an external broadcast, but as an active reality generator, a consciousness engine creating the very fabric of experience moment by moment. According to his research, there exists what he called a pre-space, a unified field of pure information, an infinite ocean of probability containing every possible configuration of experience. This field has no inherent structure, no predetermined form, no fixed qualities. It exists as pure potentiality awaiting interaction. What determines which specific configuration from this infinite sea of possibilities crystallizes into your lived experience? Your consciousness, specifically the unique configuration of your mental structures, the beliefs you hold consciously and unconsciously, the emotional signatures stored in your nervous system, the memories encoded in your neural networks, and the deep unconscious patterns inherited from family lineage and cultural conditioning. As your consciousness interfaces with this field of pure potential, it unconsciously collapses specific probabilities into manifest experience. Think of yourself as a consciousness projector and the pre-space as an infinite film library. The reality you experience is the movie being projected, determined entirely by which film your consciousness has selected and the lens through which you're projecting it. Your perceptual apparatus, shaped by your mental and emotional state, determines what becomes visible, tangible, real. Grinberg reached these conclusions through years of investigation that transcended traditional scientific boundaries, incorporating shamanic practices, deep meditative states, and collaboration with indigenous healers into his research methodology. He studied curanderos, yogis, and individuals who had accessed extraordinary states of consciousness, observing that those who fundamentally altered their perception also fundamentally altered the way reality responded to and around them. He documented instances of instantaneous healing, telepathic communication between subjects separated by distance, and synchronistic events far beyond statistical probability. Phenomena he interpreted not as supernatural occurrences, but as evidence that the neuronal field had been internally reorganized, allowing different possibilities to manifest. This understanding of reality as consciousness-generated projection aligns powerfully with quantum physics discoveries, particularly what's known as the measurement problem or observer effect. In the now legendary double-slit experiment, photons, the elementary particles of light, demonstrate entirely different behavior depending on whether they're being observed. When unobserved, they behave as waves of probability. When observed, they collapse into particles with definite positions. This suggests something extraordinary, that conscious observation doesn't simply record reality, it participates in creating it. Science is beginning to validate what mystics and spiritual adepts have taught for millennia. The external world is not separate from the internal observer, but is fundamentally responsive to the quality of consciousness observing it. The implications of this understanding reach into every corner of your existence. If what you experience is determined by what you believe at the deepest levels of your being, then transforming your reality doesn't require changing external circumstances through force or manipulation. It requires an internal metamorphosis, a restructuring not of your environment, but of the consciousness that interprets and generates that environment. This explains why so many people exhaust themselves attempting to change their lives through external effort, through struggle and resistance, and pushing against what is, only to find themselves cycling through the same patterns with different details. What remains unchanged in the internal field will continue to be projected into external experience. Understanding synergic theory and the neuronal field framework is not mere intellectual curiosity or philosophical speculation. It represents the foundational step toward reclaiming your role as the conscious author of your existence. When you genuinely accept that your mind possesses the capacity to select from infinite possibilities and project specific realities into manifestation, you fundamentally shift from being an effect of circumstances to being a cause. from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. Reality is not a fixed external condition you must adapt to. Reality is a fluid field responding to the frequency you embody. If you genuinely desire to manifest a transformed reality, wanting it and thinking optimistic thoughts will not suffice. You must access and fundamentally reprogram the most influential aspect of your consciousness, the subconscious mind. While most people believe their choices originate from conscious deliberation, neuroscience research reveals that more than 90% of human behavior and decision-making is driven by unconscious processes operating beneath conscious awareness. Within the subconscious architecture lie the hidden instructions, the invisible algorithms determining what you magnetically attract into your experience, what you reflexively repel from your field, and what you perceive as available or unavailable to you. The subconscious functions as your hidden operating system, running continuously in the background of your awareness. It archives every experience you've ever had, stores every emotional imprint you've registered, maintains every belief structure inherited from your family system and absorbed from your cultural environment, and holds even those experiences your conscious mind has completely forgotten. Every repeated phrase you internalized during your formative years, every intense emotion you experienced but never fully processed, every circumstance that shaped your fundamental understanding of how the world works. All of this data influences how your consciousness interacts with the field of infinite potential. This deeper layer of mind doesn't question, doesn't analyze, doesn't debate what it's programmed to accept as true. It simply executes its programming with precision. This means that if your subconscious holds the belief that love inevitably leads to pain, that financial security requires endless struggle, or that life is fundamentally a difficult journey, your subconscious will work tirelessly beneath your awareness to maintain these truths in your lived experience. Even when your conscious mind desires something different, manifestation doesn't fail because your desire is insufficient. It fails because of the vibrational incoherence between what you consciously want and what you unconsciously believe to be true. One of the most fascinating mechanisms revealing the subconscious mind's power is what neuroscience calls the reticular activating system, or RAS. This neurological filter processes the millions of data points bombarding your senses every moment and determines which tiny fraction of that information penetrates into your conscious awareness. But the selection criteria isn't based on objective importance or logical relevance. The filter operates based on what your subconscious programming has determined to be significant, meaningful, worth noticing. In practical terms, what you believe in your subconscious depths determines what you notice, what you perceive, what you experience as your reality. If your deep programming holds the belief that success is reserved for others, that opportunities are scarce, that you lack what it takes, your RAS will systematically filter out information that contradicts this belief. You could be surrounded by open pathways, supportive people, and perfect timing, but your consciousness will literally not register them as available. This is why countless people experience reality as limited and constrained. Not because limitation is the only possibility, but because limitation is the only configuration visible through their subconscious filter. Here's what changes everything. The subconscious can be reprogrammed, and when you update your internal programming, everything in your external field begins to reorganize. The neuronal field, that quantum ocean of potential realities, responds to this new internal configuration by restructuring the experiences, relationships, circumstances, and synchronicities that appear in your life to match your new mental architecture. This is the moment when manifestation stops feeling like you're pushing against resistance and begins flowing naturally, rapidly, effortlessly. If this understanding is resonating with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring these consciousness principles together. Reprogramming the subconscious is like installing new software into the computer of your consciousness. You stop running the same loops, repeating the same cycles, attracting the same situations with different faces. You begin accessing versions of reality that were always present in the field, but remained invisible to your previous operating system. This isn't about forcing change through willpower. It's about becoming the version of yourself with whom the desired reality naturally resonates. The vast majority of people attempting to transform their lives through positive affirmations encounter an invisible barrier they don't understand: internal resistance. When you declare, "I am wealthy," while your nervous system is saturated with the frequency of scarcity, you don't just create cognitive dissonance. You trigger a defensive response in your subconscious. The subconscious, which operates through emotional resonance and coherence, will reject any directive that contradicts what it has accepted as its foundational truth. But there exists an elegant workaround, a backdoor into the subconscious that bypasses this resistance mechanism entirely. Questions. Specifically formulated questions function as subconscious shortcuts. They don't attempt to override an existing belief. Instead, they invite the mind into a search process, creating an open space for new information to enter. Psychology identifies this as the Zeigarnik effect and the cognitive gap phenomenon. The human brain cannot tolerate an unresolved question. When you pose a query, your mind automatically, unconsciously, begins seeking resolution, seeking meaning, seeking an answer. This search process creates fertile ground for mental restructuring. The power lies entirely in how these questions are constructed. They must be formulated as presuppositions, phrased in present tense, as though the desired reality is already unfolding, and infused with elevated emotional states like gratitude, wonder, or joy. For instance, rather than affirming, "I have abundant resources," which triggers resistance if your current experience contradicts it, you ask, "Why has attracting abundance become so effortless for me lately?" Notice the subtle but profound difference. This formulation creates zero resistance because it doesn't assert anything that can be argued with. It invites your mind to search for evidence, for reasons, for explanations of a positive reality that's already happening. This type of inquiry creates a gentle but powerful internal reorganization. Because the subconscious doesn't resist questions the way it resists direct commands, it begins operating as though the premise embedded in the question is accurate. You start noticing situations and opportunities that confirm the assumption within the question. You begin feeling emotions that align with this emerging reality. You perceive possibilities that were previously filtered out of your awareness. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, your internal identity shifts into alignment with this new frequency, and the external reality field responds accordingly. Here's another powerful application. Instead of affirming, "I am deeply loved," which can activate emotional wounds and past pain, you ask, "What shifted in my energy that made attracting genuine, healthy love so natural? Feel the difference." The question presupposes that this is already your reality, but it doesn't impose a belief. It plants a seed question that your subconscious will nurture, water, and grow into lived experience. questions carry an additional advantage beyond bypassing resistance. They activate curiosity, and curiosity is the doorway to neuroplasticity, to learning, to transformation. When you enter a state of genuine curiosity and inner exploration, your mind becomes maximally receptive, flexible, open to new configurations. This is the optimal state for deep reprogramming to occur naturally and organically. When repeated with clear intention and emotional resonance, these presuppositional questions function as encoded commands your subconscious accepts and executes. They recalibrate your perception, adjust your vibrational frequency, and over time, fundamentally alter the reality you experience. The power doesn't come from finding the correct answer to the question. The power comes from generating the emotional and mental state that corresponds to the reality you're calling into being. In this context, asking is manifesting without resistance. Now, what we've explored here is the gateway into a much vaster understanding of how consciousness operates as a broadcasting system. If you're feeling the resonance of these principles and you're ready to move beyond techniques into complete embodiment, I've laid out the entire framework in Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. The book reveals the 9 master frequencies that govern manifestation, the specific practices for shifting from unconscious transmission to conscious creation, and how to permanently dissolve the static that keeps most people trapped in survival consciousness. It's linked in the pinned comment below. There exists a state of consciousness so profound and transformative that when you access it, the perceived separation between desire and fulfillment completely dissolves. This state has been referenced by various traditions and teachers as the God state, not as a religious concept, but as a descriptor for the highest vibrational frequency accessible to human consciousness. It represents the point where you cease waiting for something to arrive and begin inhabiting the reality of it already being present. In this state, you don't request, you claim. You don't hope, you embody. And this subtle but total shift in your state of being changes everything. Jacobo Grinberg described this as a complete reorganization of consciousness within the synergic field. According to his research, when an individual alters their perception so thoroughly that they begin living internally as though their desire is already their reality, the field of infinite possibilities literally bends toward this new mental configuration. External circumstances then begin reflecting this internal shift through meaningful coincidences, unexpected opportunities, and events that seem orchestrated by an invisible intelligence, all confirming what has already been established as truth within. This state cannot be forced into being through mental effort. It doesn't arise from repetitive affirmation or from attempting to control your thoughts. The God state is vibrational in nature and can only be accessed through 3 integrated keys: complete presence, elevated emotional states, and identification with your new identity. When these 3 elements converge, you align with the version of reality you're choosing to inhabit. Complete presence means existing fully in this moment, in the eternal now, without mental attachment to past events or anxious projection into future scenarios. The now is where the field is most responsive, most malleable. When you're genuinely present, your consciousness is focused rather than scattered. Your energetic field is concentrated rather than dissipated, and your vibration naturally elevates. The second key, elevated emotion, functions as the fuel source for the God state. Gratitude, joy, inner peace, and love are not merely pleasant psychological states. They are specific frequencies that expand your bioelectromagnetic field and make your consciousness more permeable to new information from the quantum field. These emotions send a clear signal to your subconscious that the reality you desire is not future or hypothetical, but present and real, creating a magnetic coherence that draws matching experiences into your field. The third key is complete identification with the transformed self. This means thinking, responding, deciding, and moving through the world as someone who already lives in the desired reality. It means abandoning the posture and energy of someone who is waiting, hoping, trying, and fully embodying the posture of someone who already is. If you desire financial freedom, how does a financially free person begin their morning? How do they speak to themselves? How do they make decisions? How do they respond to challenges? When you fully embody this identity at the level of nervous system and energy field, the universe stops responding to what you want and begins responding to what you are. In the God state, you're no longer attempting to change circumstances through force of will. You're vibrating so coherently with the desired reality that circumstances naturally reorganize themselves around you. Manifestation ceases to be effort and becomes the inevitable consequence of your state of being. This is where the invisible becomes visible, where what was once impossible becomes obvious, where everything begins to flow. There is a specific window each day when the threshold between conscious and subconscious mind becomes completely permeable, allowing mental programming, subtle suggestions, and intentional directives to be absorbed into deep consciousness without encountering resistance. This window occurs in the 60-second interval before you cross into sleep, a period most people waste on worry, mental replay of the day's events, or random thought streams. This brief transition holds extraordinary potential for consciousness reprogramming and reality manifestation. During this liminal phase between waking and sleeping, your brain shifts from beta wave patterns associated with alert analytical thinking into alpha and theta wave patterns. These slower frequencies are the same brainwave states that dominate during early childhood, a developmental phase when the mind is maximally receptive and absorbs information without critical filtering or logical questioning. This is precisely why this threshold moment holds such transformative power. Your subconscious sits open, prepared to receive information at the deepest level and integrate it into your perceived reality. Jacobo Grinberg understood this state as a direct access portal to the neuronal field, a moment when consciousness can reconfigure its internal structure, and through that reconfiguration, alter the content of external reality. For Grinberg, sleep was not a shutdown of consciousness, but an active phase of energetic and mental reorganization. When you understand this, you can transform the act of falling asleep into a tool for conscious reality creation. The practice is elegantly simple, but it demands clear intention and consistent application. Before sleep, position yourself comfortably and bring yourself into stillness. Breathe slowly and deeply, allowing each exhale to release tension from your physical body. Mentally disconnect from the events and concerns of your day, bringing your full attention into this present moment. Your objective is to cultivate a state of deep peace and presence, as though you're preparing the soil of consciousness to receive a seed. With your body fully relaxed and your mind calm, enter into the feeling state of your desire already being fulfilled. Don't strain to visualize specific images. Instead, drop into the felt experience of living that reality. What is the quality of the feeling? Freedom, relief, joy, peace, expansion? Allow these emotions to saturate your awareness. Then, at the peak of this elevated emotional state, pose a single powerful question formulated as though the reality is already present. Examples that work. What allowed everything to become so light and easy starting now? Why does living in this abundant new phase feel so natural to me? What transformed within me that caused everything to align so perfectly? Feel the emotional resonance of the question. Let it reverberate through your consciousness. And most critically, allow yourself to fall asleep while holding that state. Don't return to problem-solving or mental planning. The final frequency you emit before crossing into sleep becomes the seed planted in the fertile ground of subconscious awareness. During the sleep state, this vibrational seed will be processed, integrated, and reorganized into your perceptual field. When this practice is maintained consistently across multiple nights, your subconscious begins accepting this new identity as established truth. And when that internal acceptance solidifies, your decisions begin changing, your perceptions begin shifting, and the field of reality begins reorganizing itself around you. Because what is cultivated in the internal realm inevitably manifests in external experience. The concept of manifesting something within 48 hours may sound unrealistic or even absurd to those who still perceive reality as solid, slow-moving, and fixed. But when you understand that time is not an absolute constant, but rather a function of the vibrational frequency you sustain, this possibility shifts from theoretical to accessible. Rapid manifestation occurs when there is complete coherence between thought, emotion, identity, and action. When this alignment is achieved, reality responds with remarkable speed and precision. The first element for accelerated manifestation is sustained vibrational alignment. This means you cannot meditate for 15 minutes and then spend the remaining hours of your day thinking thoughts of limitation, fear, or doubt. You must maintain the frequency of fulfillment as your baseline state. This doesn't demand perfection, but it requires emotional consistency. If you cultivate gratitude, maintain that emotional tone as the background frequency of your day. If you embody confidence, don't allow external circumstances or other people's reactions to pull you back into uncertainty. The second element is behavioral alignment with your new identity. This doesn't require grand dramatic gestures. It requires micro-actions that match your transformed self. If you're manifesting prosperity, ask yourself, how would a prosperous person structure their day? How would they handle minor obstacles? If you're calling in a loving partnership, ask, how does someone who is already deeply loved treat themselves? These aligned actions function as evidence signals to your subconscious that this reality is not future, but present. The more internal evidence you generate, the faster external reality aligns. Let me be specific about what this looks like in practice, because this is where most people lose the thread. Behavioral alignment isn't about mimicking external behaviors you think successful or abundant people display. It's about embodying the internal frequency that naturally produces those behaviors. A truly abundant person doesn't think about abundance constantly. They simply move through the world with a baseline assumption of sufficiency, of flow, of ease. When a minor financial challenge appears, they don't spiral into panic or scarcity thinking. They maintain their center, knowing that resources flow to them naturally. This isn't delusion or bypassing reality. It's operating from a different foundational belief about how reality functions. Consider this. Every decision you make either reinforces your old identity or your new one. When you check your bank account and feel anxiety, you're reinforcing the old pattern. When you check your bank account and feel neutral curiosity or even gratitude for what is present, you're reinforcing the new pattern. When someone cancels plans and you immediately think, "People always disappoint me," you're strengthening the old neural pathway. When someone cancels plans and you think, "This created space for something better to emerge," you're building the new pathway. These micro moments, these tiny choice points throughout your day, are where transformation actually happens. The subconscious is always watching, always gathering data about what you truly believe. It doesn't listen to your affirmations. It watches your automatic responses, your reflexive thoughts, your behavioral patterns under pressure. This is why genuine transformation requires consciousness during the mundane moments, not just during your meditation practice. The person you are when you're stuck in traffic, when you receive criticism, when plans fall apart, when you're tired and depleted, that's the person your subconscious believes you to be. That's the identity it will continue to project into your reality. So here's the practice within the practice. Throughout your day, catch yourself in those automatic response moments. Pause, take a breath, and consciously choose the response that aligns with your new identity. This is consciousness training. This is how you reprogram the deepest levels of your being. Not through forced positive thinking, but through conscious choice in the moments when your old patterns would typically run automatically. The third element is recognizing the subtle preliminary signs of manifestation activating. Most people wait for dramatic instant results and therefore miss the quiet movements of the field responding. But every manifestation begins with subtle shifts, an unexpected text message, a spontaneous idea, an unusual invitation, an emotion that arises without obvious cause. These are signals that the field is responding, that probability waves are beginning to collapse in your favor. The more you recognize these signs, celebrate them, and express gratitude for them, the more you amplify and strengthen this new frequency. Here's what most people don't understand about these preliminary signs. They're not just indicators that something is coming. They are the manifestation itself in its early form. The universe doesn't typically drop your fully formed desire into your lap. It sends a breadcrumb, testing whether you'll recognize it, honor it, follow it. When you receive that unexpected message, that's not coincidence. When that unusual idea surfaces in your awareness, that's not random. When you suddenly feel compelled to take a different route home or call someone you haven't spoken to in months, that's the field communicating with you, guiding you toward the probability timeline where your desire exists. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They receive these subtle nudges and then immediately dismiss them with their logical mind. That's probably nothing. That doesn't make sense. That's not related to what I want. The rational mind, operating from past data and linear causality, cannot perceive the multidimensional intelligence of how the field operates. Synchronicity doesn't follow logical pathways. It follows energetic resonance. I'm going to share something Grinberg discovered in his research that few people know about. He found that individuals who successfully navigated what he called synergic leaps, rapid transformations in their experienced reality, all shared one characteristic. They had developed what he termed perceptual openness. This meant they could hold their intention clearly while simultaneously remaining open to how that intention might manifest. They weren't attached to the specific form, the specific mechanism, the specific timeline. They were attuned to the frequency, and they trusted the intelligence of the field to deliver through whatever pathway was optimal. This is radically different from how most people approach manifestation. Most people create a rigid mental image of exactly how their desire should appear, exactly when it should arrive, exactly what form it should take. And then they miss the actual manifestation because it arrives wearing a different costume than they expected. The job offer comes from an industry they hadn't considered. The relationship begins in a context they didn't anticipate. The financial abundance flows through a channel they never imagined. Your role is not to dictate the mechanism. Your role is to hold the frequency, recognize the signs, and follow the guidance. When you feel that inexplicable pull to attend an event you'd normally skip, go. When you keep thinking about that person you haven't contacted, reach out. When a book seems to keep appearing in your awareness, read it. These are not random thoughts. These are the field orchestrating your path toward the reality you're calling in. But the field can only guide you if you're paying attention and willing to follow the guidance, even when it doesn't make logical sense. In the comments below, share one synchronicity or unexpected sign you've received recently that you now recognize as the field communicating with you. Sometimes naming these experiences amplifies their power in your consciousness. There's also an essential element that most overlook: openness to unexpected pathways. The analytical mind wants to control the specific mechanism and timeline of manifestation. But the field of infinite possibilities operates with creative intelligence far beyond linear logic, often delivering results through surprising routes your conscious mind could never have predicted. By releasing attachment to the how and when, you allow reality to surprise you with paths you couldn't have imagined. It's in this state of surrender combined with receptivity that what people call miracles naturally occur. This is where we need to talk about something that trips up almost everyone who begins working with these principles: the paradox of intention and surrender. You must hold clear intention while simultaneously releasing attachment to outcome. You must know what you want with crystalline clarity while being completely open to how and when it arrives. This sounds contradictory to the logical mind, but it's actually the master key to rapid manifestation. Let me explain this through Grinberg's framework. When you hold an intention, you're selecting a specific frequency within the field of infinite possibilities. You're tuning your consciousness to a particular channel. But when you become attached to exactly how that frequency should manifest, you're actually constraining the field's ability to deliver. You're essentially telling the universe, I want this specific outcome, but only if it arrives through these narrow pathways I've predetermined. This creates resistance because you're trying to force the infinite field of creative possibility through the tiny bottleneck of your limited imagination. True manifestation mastery comes when you can hold your desire with burning clarity while remaining completely unattached to the form it takes. You know you're calling in deep love, but you're not attached to that love coming from a specific person or beginning in a specific way. You know you're calling in financial freedom, but you're not attached to it arriving through your current job or a particular business idea. You're attuned to the essence, the frequency, the quality of what you desire, and you trust the field's intelligence to deliver it through whatever pathway creates the highest alignment. This is what Grinberg meant when he talked about synergic efficiency. The field will always take the path of least resistance, the pathway that requires the smallest shift in probability patterns to manifest your desire. But you have to get out of the way. You have to stop insisting it happen your way. Because your way is based on past experience and limited perception. The field's way is based on infinite intelligence operating across dimensions of causality your conscious mind cannot perceive. Here's a practice that will help you embody this paradox. After you've formulated your intention and posed your presuppositional question before sleep, add this final element. This or something better, through pathways I cannot yet see, in timing that serves my highest evolution. This statement holds your intention while releasing your grip on controlling the outcome. It signals to your subconscious and to the field that you're available for surprise, for magic, for the unexpected pathway that's actually superior to what you imagined. The 48-hour window is not a rigid deadline, but an invitation. When you align clear intention, elevated emotion, coherent action, and openness to flow, something always shifts. It might be a first step, a release of old energy, a new insight, or an unexpected turn of events. What matters is this: recognize what's happening, honor it, and respond to it. Because this is the moment you transition from merely wishing for change to actively living as a conscious co-creator of your reality. Let me address something important here, something that creates confusion and disappointment for many people who begin this work. When I say 48 hours, I'm not promising that your fully manifested desire will materialize in complete form within 2 days. What I'm describing is the activation period, the window in which the field begins its reorganization in response to your new frequency. Within 48 hours of consistent practice with the tools I've shared, something will shift. But that shift might be internal before it becomes external. You might notice your thoughts changing automatically, without effort. You might observe yourself responding to situations differently, from a place of calm rather than reactivity. You might experience a sudden release of old emotion you've been carrying, or a spontaneous insight that clarifies your next step. These internal shifts are not separate from external manifestation. They are the manifestation process beginning. The external world always follows the internal world, never the reverse. This is crucial to understand because our culture has conditioned us to only value external, visible results. We've been trained to dismiss internal transformation as just psychological or not real change. But from the perspective of consciousness science and quantum field dynamics, the internal shift is the real change. Everything else is just the time lag required for dense physical reality to catch up with the new energetic configuration. Grinberg's research demonstrated this repeatedly. Individuals who experienced rapid transformation in their external circumstances had all undergone internal restructuring first. They didn't try to change their external situation and hope their internal state would follow. They changed their internal state with such completeness that their external situation had no choice but to reorganize itself to match. This is the correct sequence. Being, then having. Consciousness, then circumstance. Frequency, then form. So as you move through these first 48 hours, pay attention to the internal movements with the same reverence you would give to external signs. Notice when you feel lighter for no apparent reason. Notice when a persistent worry suddenly loses its grip on you. Notice when you make a different choice than you would have made before. These are evidence that the field is responding, that your consciousness is reorganizing, that the manifestation process is underway. Celebrate these internal shifts with gratitude and trust that the external reflection is already forming in the quantum field, making its way toward materialization in your experienced reality. Drop a comment below describing one old pattern or belief you're consciously choosing to release after watching this. Declaring this publicly creates an energetic commitment that strengthens your transformation. Now that you understand the invisible architecture shaping your experienced reality, the most crucial moment has arrived. Application. Information that remains theoretical, that stays in the realm of concept without moving into practice, remains inert. But wisdom applied transforms everything. You now possess a tool that unites scientific understanding, spiritual insight, and conscious intention into a unified practice. The ability to direct your mind so that reality responds with precision. Before we move to the final practice, I want to address something that prevents many people from fully stepping into this work. There's a subtle form of spiritual resistance that masquerades as skepticism or intellectual discernment. It sounds like this. This sounds interesting, but I need to understand it completely before I try it. Or, I'll test this once I have more time. Or, this probably works for some people, but I'm not sure about me. These thoughts feel rational, but they're actually protective mechanisms your current identity uses to prevent transformation. Here's the truth your ego doesn't want you to know. You will never fully understand these principles until you experience them directly. You can read every book, watch every video, study every scientific paper, and still remain in the realm of conceptual knowledge. Understanding follows experience in this domain, not the reverse. You cannot think your way into a new reality. You can only be your way into it. This resistance often intensifies right at the moment of application, right when you're about to actually do the practice. Suddenly you'll feel tired, or distracted, or skeptical. Your mind will offer very convincing reasons why you should do it tomorrow instead. This is not random. This is your current reality structure attempting to maintain itself. Every identity, even a painful or limited one, has a survival mechanism built in. When you threaten that identity with transformation, it will create resistance to protect itself. The way through this resistance is not to fight it or overcome it through willpower. The way through is to simply notice it, acknowledge it, and gently move forward anyway. I see you, resistance. I understand you're trying to keep me safe in the familiar. Thank you for your concern. I'm moving forward anyway. This approach neutralizes the resistance without creating an internal battle. You're not suppressing it or forcing your way past it. You're including it in your awareness while choosing a different action. There's another layer to this that's important to understand. When you begin this practice, when you start asking these presuppositional questions and falling asleep in elevated emotional states, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're disrupting the entire energetic ecosystem that has maintained your current reality. Some people in your life may respond strangely. Certain situations may temporarily become more chaotic before they stabilize into a new pattern. This is not a sign that the practice isn't working. This is evidence that it is working, that your reality is reorganizing at a fundamental level. Grinberg called this the reorganization turbulence. When consciousness undergoes rapid transformation, there's often a brief period where the old structure is dissolving, but the new structure hasn't fully formed yet. This in-between space can feel uncomfortable, confusing, even frightening. People often abandon the practice during this phase, mistaking the turbulence for failure. But this turbulence is actually the birth canal. You're in the process of being born into a new reality, and birth is rarely comfortable. If you experience this turbulence, and many people do, the key is to maintain your practice with even more consistency and trust. Don't abandon ship during the storm. This is when your commitment to your transformation matters most. Keep asking your questions. Keep entering the elevated emotional states. Keep behaving as your new identity. The turbulence will pass, and when it does, you'll find yourself in a reality that reflects your new internal configuration. Tonight, before you cross into sleep, dedicate 60 seconds to the practice you've learned. Release all tension from your physical body. Enter the emotional frequency of already living your desired reality and formulate your powerful presuppositional question. Fall asleep holding that state, and tomorrow remain alert. Something will shift, a sign will appear, a movement will occur, some confirmation from the field that surrounds you. When you recognize it, express gratitude and celebrate it. Because every piece of evidence, no matter how small, reflects the new identity you're embodying. Consider returning to this transmission each morning for the next 7 days to reinforce these principles in your consciousness. And if someone in your life is ready for this understanding, share this video with them. When you share transformational knowledge, you're not just helping another person, you're strengthening your own embodiment of these principles and creating a resonance field that accelerates manifestation for everyone involved. If this transmission has touched something within you, if it's activated a recognition or a remembering, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this frequency, this space of consciousness exploration where we're collectively remembering what we truly are and what we're truly capable of. The more of us who embody this understanding, the more the collective field shifts to reflect that truth. And before you go, drop one word in the comments that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing right now. Let that word be your energetic signature to the quantum field. My suggestion: what is revealing itself now that confirms everything has already aligned? Remember, you command your consciousness, and reality bends to meet you. Now, once you've mastered this technique of directing your subconscious through presuppositional questions, the next evolution is understanding how to stop needing outcomes entirely. Because when you release all attachment to needing, you enter a frequency where reality has no choice but to deliver. That's exactly what we explore in the next transmission. When you stop needing, you start to attract. Watch it now to discover how detachment becomes your greatest manifestation power.